Good morning, everyone. Great to be with you all virtually and truly excited for today's webinar on digital natives and ISVs, priorities in the era of COVID-19. Sincerely hope everyone is staying healthy and productive during this time. Looking forward to today, and let's go ahead and get started. Great. So I'm Zach Jordan. I'm an enterprise manager at Google Cloud, and I have the honor of kicking off today's session. I lead our digital partnerships group here at Google for the region. I've been with the company just about 9 years now, and I'm based out of Austin, Texas. My team manages the relationships with our most strategic digital, SaaS, and ISV customers in our region. I'm joined here by my esteemed colleagues, Charlie Lisk and Seth Moffitt, who are both with our Global Reseller Partner of the Year, SADA. SADA has been on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing private companies list for 11 years straight, which is pretty remarkable, and deliver incredible support and services to our Google Cloud customers in the region. They've won our Google Cloud Global Partner of the Year award in the past, and overall do a phenomenal job working with our customers in the region. I couldn't be more excited to be with them today with you all this morning. Charlie Lisk is the SADA practice lead for SADA's digital native business unit. Seth Moffitt is the SADA solutions architect. So we have the business and the technical team from SADA along with me this morning. Throughout the webinar, myself, Charlie, and Seth will lead everyone through some of the business trends that are impacting digital companies during COVID-19, as well as how companies that utilize cloud services from Google can reduce costs, scale up and down to meet demand, and be as productive as possible from an engineering perspective when building, deploying, and managing software with automation, CI/CD, and more. We will go through the content, and all three of us will stay on the line through the end of the webinar to address any questions that come up throughout the session. Great. So having purview over all of the SaaS and digital businesses in the region, I get to see how each of them are being impacted by COVID-19, and it's very different across the board. Some of our customers are seeing huge spikes in demand and network traffic and are trying to figure out how to scale up faster to get more capacity and optimize costs as they scale to meet demand. These are platforms such as online learning or video conferencing, which is seeing obvious huge growth as the virtual world becomes front and center in so many of our lives. Other businesses and organizations, such as companies that are building software for the oil and gas industry, are seeing a reduction in demand as COVID-19 and oil prices weigh down some of the ability to drive growth and accelerate new business during this time of economic uncertainty. We're seeing quite a bit of disparate results from different industries during COVID-19, all of whom typically need some help in one way or another to get through this. Many companies that I've talked to are finding it more difficult to acquire new customers during this time of economic uncertainty. A lot of people are putting off making large decisions, and there's also pressure from existing customers to reduce their spend, renegotiate their agreements, or canceling their subscription altogether. We're seeing pressure both areas. It's difficult to acquire new customers, and it's harder to maintain and grow your existing customers. This has led to furloughs or headcount reductions in lots of companies that I've talked with. In fact, in our region over the past few months, I've met with at least 10 companies that have gone through this unfortunate time. As such, I've been very vocal about how Google wants to help. Recently, in late March, we announced a fund of more than $800 million for COVID-19 relief efforts. across philanthropy, credits for small businesses, research grants, and more to help fight this across the board in a wide variety of ways. I've been very proud about how Google has stepped up to help small businesses during this time, and I want to do the same and leverage our position in the market to help as many SaaS, digital, and ISV companies as possible through this. With that said, my mission right now is really to help as many companies as possible. So I'll put it out there. If you are looking to improve cash flow, trying to avoid layoffs, struggling to win new customers, are trying to find a job yourself, or just trying to improve your financial position to best weather the storm, knowing that there's going to be prolonged economic uncertainty, please connect with me. I will do absolutely everything I can to help you and your company during this time. Throughout today's webinar, we'll walk you through some of the ideas that we have for how we think we can help digital, SaaS, and ISV businesses during this time. And we've got a great team to do that with you today. I'm going to turn it over to Charlie now. Charlie's going to walk you through some more specific trends within the digital, SaaS, and ISV sector. Following that, Seth is going to go from a technical perspective around how companies can utilize cloud services to best adapt to this time, as well as really help automate, scale, reduce costs, and set your company up to be successful during COVID-19 and hopefully come out the other side of this even stronger than before. Thank you, and looking forward to addressing any questions that come up throughout the presentation at the end of this call. I'll remain on the line through that. I'll turn it over to Chumley now.
Great. Thank you, Zach, and welcome everybody. As Zach mentioned, my name is Charlie Lisk, and I lead our digital native practice and ISV practice here at SADA. So we specialize in serving software companies like yourselves and really focus on what does it take to be in the business of software. So there are technical aspects and those requirements, of course, like every other business, but also really specific challenges that SaaS providers deal with every day. So we're here at SADA, and my role is to help you focus on SaaS companies to become, really help you create like a technical and a business alignment to be able to really go beyond just being a good cloud provider. We want to actually enable you and help you to grow your revenue. So I'm going to start with the summary. The takeaway is pretty much this. COVID has really forced us all to change, and whether we were ready for it or not, or began to adapt in time or not, the thing about it is what we think is, while the market is in a slump, the companies who aggressively take action really come out better on the other side. And so Seth, go ahead and skip for me, bub. So I want to go through some actual numbers. So like Zach said, I'm actually going to be doing a lot of data presenting right now. I feel like it's important because you need to be able to understand what is the SaaS market doing. And so to do that, I'm going to turn to my good friends over here at Profitwell. Now, for those who haven't heard, Profitwell is a free service that all recurring revenue companies should leverage. It basically gives you insight into your subscription data so that you can better manage your business. The best part about these guys being a free service is that lots of companies use the platform. So we get to look at really, really good and comprehensive data on what's happening in the marketplace, when it comes to SaaS companies and, their real revenue numbers. So big shout out to Profitwell, Patrick and Aaron and the guys over there for working with me on pulling these numbers. So check them out if you haven't used them or thought of them today. So let's look at how they pulled these numbers. Next slide for me, Seth. So what we're going to look at is some numbers from what we call the Profitwell Index. And that's where they basically pull recurring revenue numbers from over 17,000 companies in really two main sectors, B2B SaaS and then direct to consumer. And so this next slide just shows just their process for scrubbing data. So if you're a data analytics guy and you like to understand how people look or scrub the data, this is essentially the process that the Profitwell Index is put through. So next slide. If we look at the current environment, the takeaway, the message is there's forced change. But what we can do and what we're going to look at here is what are the lessons that we can learn from these over 17,000 companies, and how can you take this current environment and actually win in business, not only during COVID, but then of course, on the other side of this as well. So the net, all subscription companies are flattening. Not sure if that's a huge surprise to anybody, but let's actually get into the numbers. So the overall subscription business was really trending up over 2019 and even through Q1 of 2020. And I don't think that's a huge surprise to people. But then, of course, you enter COVID and we see a sharp decline in March and April. But what we have seen is that we're starting to climb back out of the hole a little bit. Now, remind you, these are both the B2B SaaS and the direct-to-consumer numbers. We're going to dig into them individually here in a sec. But let's look at this next slide, which is just a glimpse into 2020. So this is January until current. When you look a little closer, you can see the pretty clear impact that the shutdowns have been having on the economy and then, of course, on subscription businesses. So again, this is, everybody, both direct-to-consumer and B2B. So if we look at what's happening, next slide, please, Seth. If we break down these individually now, not combining anymore, let's just start with direct-to-consumer. My guess is that less of y'all are in this business than you are in the B2B space. Really, a lot of the volatility that we've seen in the subscription market, through this COVID era, has been in the direct-to-consumer space. But that doesn't mean that B2B is off the hook. So just to take a look at direct-to-consumer like e-commerce companies or media companies, these are in fact a couple of industries that have done really well in general through COVID. But we've also seen clearly that steady growth from 2019 and then in through Q1 of 2020, but then a really sharp decline here as well. So I think that it hit direct-to-consumer a little harder than a lot of us thought that it would. But then, of course, there are those industries like e-com companies and media companies who have seen some actual real growth as COVID's effects have really taken place. People ordering things from home, consuming more content online. But it's not the same picture for every single direct-to-consumer business. If we go to this next slide that shows just 2020, again, you can kind of zoom in here and see the very clear effects that COVID has had and this economic downturn has had. Let's take a look at business to business. This is really where we like to focus. A lot of our customers are B2B SaaS companies. And the big takeaway, big summary for B2B right now is it's mostly flat. If you were to ask me a month ago, and we looked at these numbers a month ago, I'd have told you that B2B was down and flattening, and we weren't sure exactly what it was going to do. We see now that even B2B SaaS is recovering some, but it's going to take a lot more growth and time before we can really undo what COVID has done over the last few months. So let's look at those actual numbers. So same trend we see here, 2019 through Q1 2020, SaaS trends in the B2B space have been trending upwards. We see really steady growth in that market, but then of course, we see this sort of sharp leveling off. You can see that flattening at the far right of the curve, really in that March to May timeframe when a lot of businesses were pulling back and a lot of spending was shutting down. So the next slide shows, again, just a zoom into 2020, we can see exactly what this year looks like. And COVID's main impact on subscription businesses really just slowed the net new revenue being generated. So this graph really shows us that in terms of net new revenue coming into B2B SaaS companies, major flattening off, but we are starting to see a little bit of that return. Now, at the end of the day, though, this leaves these flat new revenue numbers do leave companies vulnerable to another killer in the technology space, which is churn. So let's look at how do SaaS revenues look when you slow or flatten net new revenue, and then you add in the effects of churn. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to dig into what's happening in the B2B space here. We'll leave direct to consumer off to the side. If you got questions about that, let me know. I'll give you those numbers as well. But what's interesting about this next graph is, to kind of break it down for you, this top line shows MRR gain. So this is your net new revenue gain. The bottom line shows you the effects of MRR based on churn and downselling. And for a quick definition check, churn is simply when a company leaves you and they don't pay you anymore. They're not a customer. And then downselling is when they go from like a premium service down to like a lower level service. So it means they pay you less. Sometimes they even go to a freemium version if you have those. So when we see that net new sales has flattened coming out of Q1, the thing to note here is that losses of existing revenue, that's really what's going to hurt. So the bleeding that comes when customers churn off of your platform or downsell to a lower tiered service, lower price service, this really starts to put cost pressures on your business. Because remember, to acquire a customer, to get $1 of net new revenue costs you, the company, in sales and marketing and everything, about $1.07, $1.12. So you're actually losing money typically when you're acquiring customers. And then to renew customers that are already on your platform costs about 12 cents to renew $1 of revenue. So really the holy grail here is to be able to get a customer and keep them. Getting customers is expensive. Keeping customers in general is rather not. So when we see that there was a lot of churn and downselling happening through this COVID timeframe, this is really the thing that sticks out. And the room for improvement that companies really need to be looking at. So I want to stop here and kind of make it clear that this is an analysis of B2B SaaS, right? These are technology subscription companies. This doesn't reflect what's happening in your market, like for your end users. Oil and gas, these lines don't look like this. Hospitality, those don't either. So if you are serving those segments, if those are your customers, you're likely to look a little bit different than this. Your churn numbers are probably different and your net new revenue is certainly different. But if your customers are people who are, some of the lucky few, I suppose, that are actually in a boom right now, then, your numbers may look a little different than this as well. So if you're not feeling the pinch, or maybe you feel like these numbers don't quite apply to you, just realize that your situation may be slightly different. But at the end of the day, that's really the uniqueness of the software and technology vertical that we're in. We serve all industries, and so we don't all kind of grow and shrink together at the same time. Part of why we love this business, right? So let's move to the net of B2B. The overall picture is not great, right? If you've got a slowdown in net new revenue and then a loss of existing revenue, at the end of the day, the big picture doesn't look as great as you'd like to see. And what we want to start to shift the focus of this conversation on is what pressures does that begin to put on your business as you are slowing revenue and then maybe even losing existing revenue. So if you average out the net new revenue and the churn numbers just for this year, from January 2020 to now, B2B SaaS is barely growing at a 1% rate for the year. So while this is a better picture than, say, a month ago, the pressures of your business really remain the same. You're being asked to drive out cost while still focusing on customer acquisition and finding net new revenue. And oh, by the way, the customers that you do have, don't let them leave. You have to protect them because you need that money to survive as well. So net of all of this is, how do we see the market right now based on what we know about it? Again, our focus in our group is just working with SaaS companies and trying to really understand the business that you're in. So we see that SaaS companies are hyper-focused on cost reduction. And for the most part, we think that that totally makes sense. We think it's a natural reaction, but at the same time, too, it's also something that you can control right now. The flow of customers coming in is not something you can always just kind of turn the faucet on and off, right? Marketing has to do their thing, sales has to do their thing. And in an environment where net new revenue has slowed the way it does, that gives us an indication of the kind of behavior that we're seeing in the market that will really start to shut off net new revenue opportunity. So this is weird, though, for this industry, because traditionally net new revenue was really the top priority for most SaaS companies, where their investors were fine taking a short-term loss because it meant customer growth and revenue growth, and then the potential for future profits. But currently, there's really no predictor for how long this COVID environment is going to last, and it's making a lot of buyers cautious. It makes your customers, buyers, cautious. And so your companies are kind of buckling down, or we're seeing a lot of companies buckling down to kind of weather that storm, right? So the fact of the matter is, though, is that during a crisis, waiting it out has not really always proven to be a winning strategy. So in the crash of 2008, the companies that slowed down or they used the slowdown to get ahead, those are the businesses that really came out on top. So my suggestion here, we're going to talk about this, but you've got to take action while the caution flag is out. And so if we're going to continue that racing metaphor, while the race is on hold, you need to take a pit stop. You've got to fuel up. You got to take this time to change the tires, make adjustments in your strategy. Right now in this economy, the caution flag is up and the world is like slowly circling the track, waiting for this economy to open back up and say, go. And this means that right now is your time to make those changes that maybe weren't on the roadmap for this year. So let's talk through what some of those adjustments should actually be while this economy is in the position that it is. So we're going to switch to technology decisions that you should be making right now and how those can actually impact the business. So my brain is always trying to tie what happens in IT and cloud ops and engineering back to the business, back to revenue. So how are the decisions that we're making in these departments today improving your competitive position or hitting some key metrics for your company, be it growth, revenue, or otherwise? At the highest level, we know, the two big buckets, right? There's lowering costs and there's driving revenue. We just talked about those. But underneath those costs, there's really a number of things that you can do to facilitate savings for the business. And not only just during this critical time, but really long-term as well. So making sure, though, at the same time that the decisions you make today and in the coming months and weeks not only address some of your near-term goals, but that you really don't sacrifice your long-term strategy. This is pretty key. Now, luckily, we live in the age of the cloud, which is fantastic. I couldn't imagine businesses and customers having to weather this storm without that technology. A lot of that stuff's just kind of packaged up and readily available to you. So, the first adjustment we think that you should be making in this time is in analytics and machine learning. So in other words, can you understand your business the way that I just explained, everybody else's business, right? Do you have those insights? Can you do more than just hunker down at this time? And we firmly believe that if you have the data, you can be data driven and actually be proactive about it instead of just sort of waiting it out and hoping for the best. Fact of the matter is, though, too few SaaS companies actually have strong and mature analytics and machine learning practices either implemented or sadly even on the roadmap. So I actually want you to take a moment, like right now, and ask yourself if you have the insights into your business to be able to go through the numbers like something I just went through a minute ago. Do you know what your churn is? Do you know who's churning? Do you know where your net new revenue is coming from and in which sectors? So do you have the info to be able to create a success science repository of information that tells you, what is your ideal customer that sales and marketing should be doubling down on? Do you know which features your end users are consuming within your products? Which ones do they consume the most? And then be able to give that kind of feedback loop to product management so they can make the right enhancements. And then at the end of the day, we talked about churn being a killer. Do you know who's going to churn, based on all the factors right now? If you're thinking, hey, these would all be great things, but maybe today I'm not a Google Cloud customer, that's really not a big deal. Google actually made an acquisition of a really stellar analytics company not too long ago called Looker. Beauty of Looker was it wasn't made to run just on GCP and just analyze workloads running in Google Cloud. It actually runs across GCP, AWS, Azure, other clouds. So really, you've got a world-class analytics tool that you can use and leverage to gain insight, even if your data and your workloads aren't actually running in Google Cloud. So this is an easy entry point into the analytics world, despite where your data resides. And so I encourage you to begin to look at how can we begin to understand our business a little bit better, especially right now. And again, while things are slowed down, this is the time to begin to look. So next thing I want to look at is economies of scale. I assume that many of you are running in clouds today, and you do so because you want to enable small teams to do big things, right? The cloud is great for that. Economies of scale traditionally means either you're producing some widget at such volumes that your cost of goods sold on each widget reduces at some point, right? In our world, though, it really translates to lowering your per customer cost of hosting your SaaS product. So economies of scale is really one of the only economic moats, though, that we're going to talk about here. But as a SaaS provider, there's really six that you need to be concerned about. There's low cost of sales, there's diverse revenue streams, a network effect, unique capabilities, high switching costs, and then of course, economies of scale. Those are like the six generally available or generally accepted economic moats. So if you think of your product as a castle and you want to protect that castle by surrounding it with economic moats, these are the things that you look to do that in. Thing about it is, for this group, there's really not many of these economic moats that as engineering or maybe cloud ops that you can dictate or improve. But economies of scale is one of those things. And what's even better is it can be acted on immediately. And even during a down economy, when you have tremendous cost pressures on you and on the business, there are some things that you can be doing right now to lower your cost of goods sold for your SaaS product in the short term, which of course will then translate at scale. So let me show you what I mean. Let's talk about 3 ways that you can reduce cost of goods sold in the cloud right now. So number 1, shocker, simply pay less for cloud. I wanted to start with the kind of obvious one, but a couple things I want to point out. You can literally pay less for your infrastructure and your supporting technology. That is one way to lower cost of goods sold. Right now, there's no shortage of tech vendors out there trying to make a deal for you and trying to get you in some kind of long-term commitment with them. And these are good arrangements. I've done plenty of arrangements like this in the past when companies were hurting, short-term relief for longer-term commitments. There's nothing wrong with them. But I do caution you that you have to keep thinking long-term. This crisis will end, and when it does, you don't want to be stuck in contracts or in bed with vendors that don't really align with your corporate vision and they don't align with your long-term goals. So just make sure you keep thinking long-term as you do these things. More importantly, though, choose to work with a vendor and with service providers that offer value-added services. And oftentimes you can get a great discount on those, or sometimes even free right now. The thing about this is it'll help you make the most of whatever investment you're actually making right now. So it's super critical right now because every decision you make, the ROI on it is going to be just really heavily scrutinized because everybody's getting so lean in their spending. But that means that right now, it doesn't mean shut down spending. It just means that you have to get more value and business outcomes out of the things that you are buying. So lean on the experts in the products and the services that you're looking to get. The last thing you need right now is more tech debt and kind of wasted money. So make sure that you align with providers who help solve this problem for you. They help you realize the business outcomes. That's pretty super critical right now. Number 2. So the second way to reduce your cost per customer is really to evaluate the current environments that you're running in. You have to look for opportunities to optimize. So most of you are running in oversized environments somewhere that you're paying for, either in your own data centers or in public clouds somewhere. It is not uncommon that you'll have groups of engineers or different people just spinning up compute for different projects. And that stuff really just kind of gets unwieldy and out of control, and it certainly gets costly. So now is a great time. Analyze your environments because there are cost savings in there. You just need to find them. And it really helps to have somebody from the outside, come in and help you do this because they can approach it with different tools, a fresh set of eyes, a different perspective, a lot more experience in coming in with this particular type of task. And I know this may feel like some of you may feel like this is maybe a little invasive, maybe slightly icky, but it's not. I promise. Really in our experience, in our customers' experience, the juice is certainly worth the squeeze here. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. Third thing, automation. This is another way that you can reduce your cost per customer of hosting. One of the benefits of cloud is that that really doesn't get realized when you run in your own data center or colo is the value of automation that the cloud offers. So the ability for you to just spin up a managed Kubernetes service in a flash or data warehouse in a flash and always having it running on the latest and greatest hardware that's like engineered to work together. These are huge values that you don't really see on-prem if any of you are still hosting your SaaS environments on-prem. Fact about those environments is you're still usually spending 75+% of your time just on run and maintain activities. And that is really a killer on your cost structure. Now, you also may be thinking, hey, we moved to AWS or we moved to Azure and we're still sitting around a lot, babysitting our infrastructure and sort of managing things really, really hands-on. And I think it reveals a really critical point, right? Over the last handful of years, we've all had to kind of come to this realization that cloud is not a place. Cloud is an operating model. And automation is a really key factor in that operating model that you should be utilizing. So, automation, it can be as simple as just speeding up your time to deployment, for new customers if they're coming on. This is really going to reduce your time and resources needed to spin up new people. You can certainly automate that, but more importantly, it's going to decrease the time to value for your end users as well. Plus, sales always appreciates it when you can sell something and then boom, there it is, new customers up and running. And then, lastly, don't forget about automation and security, right? The more built-in security features that your cloud provider has, the fewer vulnerabilities that you're going to experience, because human error happens. And if you've got to configure all that stuff, not only does it take time, but you open yourself up for error by having all of that stuff not automated. So make sure you're looking at that. So what's the big takeaway? What I want you to think about is working with a cloud and a service provider who is focused on business outcomes, right? They can help you realize the ROI. This is the cloud. This is not the old product days where you bought the product and then it was up to you to, extract all the business value out of it, right? This is a different model. So I want you to really help transition yourself as a user and a buyer and really lean on your, value-added resellers, lean on your cloud provider to make sure that they're helping you realize business outcomes, not just providing you cheap infrastructure. Also, optimize your current environments. This may mean moving to GCP, it may not, but at the end of the day, you should know what it would cost if you did decide to move, especially right now with all the cost pressures that you're probably feeling and will continue to feel for the near future. Seth's actually going to talk about a program here in a little bit that makes that available to you. So, perk up, listen to that. And then lastly, choose automation as another path to reaching economies of scale sooner. This is going to improve customer experience and really help you beef up security. So these will allow you in aggregate to pull forward your profitability horizon for your SaaS offerings. If you can reduce churn and you can, continue to grow net new revenues while reducing your cost of goods sold, all of that is going to translate into your company being more profitable sooner, which is what every investor wants to see. So while we are in this time where you can't really count on net new revenue to really drive the business and get the same kind of growth that we've been experiencing, say in 2019, you really got to look at how you be smart and optimize some of those costs. What can you do with the savings? Really, there's a couple of things. I mean, one, you can just reduce your OpEx if you've got cash flow issues right now, right? That's something every investor is going to want to see. Your CFO is going to want to see. Or you can pass on those savings to be able to be more competitive, like with key customers in competitive markets, be able to give a little extra discount, give a couple free months, something like that. But at the end of the day, you're going to have the cash to do that with. So let's find it in your environments. So I'm going to pass it off here after this slide. Lastly, before I go real quick, I want to just do kind of 3 tips for SaaS companies today. And they really center around the 3 killer C's of SaaS, which is cost, churn, and commoditization. So starting with cost, we talked about finding a good provider that is less expensive, but make sure you're not just aligning with a technology provider. Make sure you're also aligning with a business partner. Really, your highest cost in your business is sales and marketing. It can be on average about 40% of all of your revenue goes to sales and marketing costs. I mentioned those high customer acquisition costs earlier. Make sure that you're aligning with a provider that doesn't just provide cheap infrastructure, but someone that helps you grow your revenue. Okay. Next, when it comes to churn, right now, especially, you want to set up a customer cancellation triage. If you have a cancel button on your website or in your customer portal, we want to remove those temporarily, not to track customers, but to be able to talk to customers. If you can gather the data of why customers are churning right now and set up salvage offers, maybe you find that a lot of your customers service the gyms and fitness, arena. And since those are still closed, their business is down. You can salvage offer them with a couple of free months, move them to a free version of your product, or just do something to where they don't leave. Because if they leave, it's going to cost you a lot to get them back. So make sure that you're gathering the data on why your customers are churning or what's happening with them, so you can create effective salvage offers. And then lastly, commoditization. We're not as commoditized in the SaaS market as, say, the hardware market became. Not to say it won't happen, but look at things like Powered by Looker. Again, Looker, the analytics company, Powered by Looker is simply a program that they have to where you can embed Looker into your customer-facing SaaS applications. And that simply enables analytics within your SaaS app that you probably didn't have before. From a customer experience and in-user experience, that takes it from just something they go to complete some type of business transaction within, and turns it into something that they can go and is more valuable because they're getting business insights that they didn't have before. So don't leave yourself open for disruption by having gaps in your product and in your portfolio of offerings by having something as simple as no analytics within your product. Here's a very simple, very fast way that you can start to put that in and show real value to your customers. So that's it for me. We're going to stick around and take some questions. But right now, I'm going to turn it to Seth, where he's going to walk through some of the practical and technical ways you can actually implement some of this stuff. So, Seth, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. And yeah, once again, my name is Seth Moffett, Solution Architect here at Sawdust Systems. My role is really to help customers understand what is the cloud, what makes Google unique, and also are assigned with them for the long-term success. So really what I'm trying to accomplish is to help customers do these things that Charlie's been representing. How do we automate our environment? How do we ensure that it's secure? How do we constantly kind of move the needle or change the way that we're doing or thinking about IT in order to have very high value but very low cost? And so first thing I like to call out here, security can be a very exhaustive conversation, but do want to at least highlight it and tie it to the automation side here. One thing that, if coming from a hardware background, the things that you can take advantage of with Google is really that shared responsibility model. Something as low level as IaaS or virtual machines, take advantage of Google's own automation, Google's own maintenance and management on the bottom layer, where now we can go ahead and reduce that cost, if you will, of having to have somebody come in, assess your hardware, think about your networking. All this is managed by the greatest in security, and what we believe to be some of those greatest being on Google Cloud themselves. One thing I like to call out, back in the day, during the Heartbleed virus, Google was actually one of the first people to recognize the vulnerability, patch the vulnerability, and go and deploy it to their entire fleet of machines before Intel publicly announced the vulnerability. And so these are the kind of security experts that we're seeing at Google that all our customers are able to take advantage of while they're sleeping, while they're not even thinking about it. So that's kind of the low level that we like to kind of highlight from there. But moving further up the stack, Google has a ton of security products that can be simply implemented and integrated with existing tools or new tool sets when starting to look into this automated way of doing things. And so really just to quickly call out, there's always a unique, everyone's unique as far as your security, your compliance measurements, depending on the data you have, the customers that you're interacting with. But rest assured, just at that low level, that if we are looking to go to Google, Google does have layers of defense and depth for security, has different certifications for their hardware, for their data centers, pretty much globally. You can rest assured that we don't do this government versus normal cloud. So depending on where you are, whether it be a regional or depending on your vertical, these will apply wherever it is that you're deploying within Google. So to really tie it all in, what is cost optimization strategies? Really, these are the four things that we tend to see, or things that I tend to look at when helping my customers lower their costs, but still providing high performance. You can very quickly shoot yourself in the foot if you are right sizing for a time in which that you're for a time that doesn't measure up with where we're at. For instance, Black Friday for retail is a very high performance need, a lot of traffic, a lot of people online. And the worst thing that can happen is somebody having a bad experience with your service and going to your competitor. So really to reduce churn is kind of a walking that tightrope of, I need to reduce my cost, but I also need to be high performant and be able to scale and have those resources when I actually need them. And so that's really where these different tools that we like to highlight here come in and we can take advantage of. With demand management, using those tools to review utilization metrics to right size for what does a typical day-to-day look like, to make sure that that is where we're setting ourselves up at that baseline. How do we go ahead and take advantage of less hardware or utilize less CPU or less RAM? Really just obfuscate that away and use it as a more, every time I use this service, be able to just pay for that. That's where we start to take advantage of service infrastructure, which we'll go into some of the products that Google has to offer there. But those are very quick, easy wins for us to really reduce the management, move ourselves towards that no ops perspective, so that we can more or less set it and forget it. But at the same time, have reassurance that someone, that being Google, will scale the service up to supply the demand if and when that happens. Uh, Further from there, take advantage of discounts. Google has a number of different discount verticals, whether it be preemptible virtual machines, which are at around an 80% discount. There's also a sustained use discount, which are more so for persistent running workloads that as long as you're running them 24/7, Google automatically applies that to your bill. So once again, a set it and forget it type of discount. Furthermore, if we are looking to be long-term with Google, if you are on GCP today, I would highly urge those to utilize committed use discounts. For those who have persistent workloads that run 24/7, we can certainly say that I will be using these 100 cores and this 100 gigs of RAM at any point in time throughout the entire year. Those are great candidates to use these committed use discounts and to be able to take advantage of further and further deeper discounts. And last but not least, hold departments and teams accountable to their spend. I'll be transparent here at SADA. We've been guilty of this in our early days, where developers get their own sandbox and want to be able to play around with the different tools that we're helping our customers to support. And so really within that realm, we've started to learn around this automation. How do we turn these things off when we're not using them? Right now, we've been on this call for an hour. I'm not in GCP. So what am I doing with those virtual machines or my containers that are spinning within Google when I'm not actually interacting with them? That's where automation comes in to really turn these things down. And first and foremost, you have to measure it to know that it's there. Second, once we have those metrics, we can go ahead and apply new policies and ensure that we are removing those costs. So what makes Google unique? We were the first to do per second billing. Um, that was something that came out a number of years ago. So truly it becomes that model and follows the spirit of which pay for what you use when you're using it. We've discussed sustained use discounts, but moving to the next one, custom machine types. This is something that is completely unique to Google. Within the other cloud providers, it's really about these boxes, and hopefully these boxes fit for what it is that your application is trying to do. Within Google, we can say with full assurance that if you need to have a little bit more RAM or a little less RAM, a little more CPUs, or a little bit of a blend of the two, we do provide you to create your own resource types to properly fit the application and what it needs to do. To keep us honest, Google actually has machine learning that applies to the actual workload within that virtual machine and makes recommendations for right sizing. So for instance, if you have a very beefy box and for 16 cores, Google will highlight maybe you only need 4 cores here. Based on what we're seeing from real world use, you can reduce this and reduce the number of cores here, and you can see what the cost is right there within the console. And the inverse is true. If we tend to find that one of our applications are getting hit a little bit harder than we initially had sized it for, Google will make the recommendation to say, maybe this is something for you to go ahead and increase. And so once again, goes back into that tightrope of, is it all about performance, make sure I have less churn, or on the other side of it, do I reduce my cost to make sure I can keep the lights on at the end of the day? With this, it really takes out the guesswork. So really, how do we start to take advantage of more and more automation? How do we, once again, the tightrope of scale versus keeping my costs low? What we tend to find is it's a blend between going from the IaaS side up into the serverless world, or as we call it within Google, Google Functions. So there is a cost advantage between going with these different products, but also just kind of more soft cost is the human capital that it takes to keep these environments up and running. Not going to say that at the it's much harder to keep up a compute engine environment versus working with this completely serverless. Each of them does require their management and due diligence, but there are certain tasks that we take off the table to where really we could stop thinking about keeping the lights on because things are automated and really start to focus on how do we how do we optimize our application further? How do we take advantage of more serverless technologies? How do we create and build that new feature or new function that our customers have been asking for the past couple of months? Really, the idea is to start pivoting our focus to, once again, not keeping the lights on, but being innovative, creating new things that we can sell to either keep our customers happy or to acquire new ones. So very quickly, Google has products across the board. At the very, I'll call it at the low level with IaaS, virtual machines are very quick to spin up. Google actually has the fastest spinning up virtual machines out of any of the cloud providers. So truly one of those situations where when I need it, and those customers are flowing through the gates, and we need to be able to serve more compute in our application to them. Google, once again, is the fastest to be able to spin up those resources for you to ensure that there's customer satisfaction. On the very opposite side, we can scale those things back down. But there's a couple, wouldn't say issues with virtual machines. We've been using them for over a decade now, and one of the things that we tend to see is kind of a waste of resources. And so, what do we do if we were to build our virtual machines towards the truest ceiling? Chances are we're never going to really hit that unless we're hitting those Black Fridays or those really high weekends. And so, one of the things that we can take advantage of right out of the gates for our customers are things like managed instance groups. And what this does is it takes our just traditional application, be able to scale it from 1 to n to serve those additional customers. And as those customers start to log off or sign off or are done using our services, scale those back down to the very minimum to ensure that, once again, we're serving just the proper amount without having to bleed money for keeping the ceiling super high that's never getting filled. Oh, this is kind of once again, the kind of that first step that we see a lot of customers going from who are running the monoliths, are once again building for the absolute peaks of our time. But there are some paradigm shifts that are going on right now where a lot of organizations are wanting to take advantage of containerized applications. And so, as you can see here with the different numbers, people are assessing multi-cloud. People are wanting to modernize, not necessarily just lift and shift with our application as is. If we want to move to another cloud provider, or we want to move off of prem to the cloud, there are some tangible shifts we want to change to the way we're developing our applications or deploying those. And so, really, this new world order has been centered around containers. And what's beautiful about containers is, once again, the portability of it, but also the lack of resources or additional resources we need to make these successful. And so, what we can actually do with why I say these are less resources is, if you're familiar with virtual machines, whether that be on-prem or in the cloud, there is a guest operating system that sits within every virtual machine, and a application sits on top of that. And so, this could be wasted resources. When looking towards containerized applications, we're able to isolate each of those applications, put them in the same host or node in our world, and they share that operating system. And so we're really shaving off of that very much needed operating system for our applications to run. But now that it's shared, these applications can be very slim. We can pack a lot more applications on a single server, and thus start to find a lot more optimization within our environment. So, how is Google accomplishing this with Kubernetes? What Kubernetes is a container orchestration service. Google had created this known as Borg back in the day, and this is what all Google services run on. Everything from YouTube to search, even Google Cloud Platform itself. And so, during the early days, during the cloud wars, Kubernetes has now shown itself to be the latest and greatest, and everybody is starting to move this. To prove the point, you even see it within Amazon, you see it within Azure. So this is a very highly adopted technology, and is leading the way to keep our containers managed, deployed, highly available, or to be able to deploy out the net new features or applications that we've been discussing. So, is Kubernetes something to take seriously? I would say so. It has, as you can see here, 442 years of effort. So, 15,000 contributors. So, tons of people looking at this, utilizing this, running this in production today. And these aren't just random developers on the internet. These are some of the biggest names out there, from Red Hat to eBay, SoundCloud, New York Times, even. All these different big technology names are helping to support the open source community of Kubernetes, and are taking it to that next level day in and day out. So we, as SADA, have become very familiar with Kubernetes. We love it, helping our customers assess these as customers are moving away from the traditional virtual machine model, going to this containerized world, and ensuring that we have those applications staying up and running in a successful manner. What is GKE? It's basically just a bunch of nodes or VMs that are managed by the master node within Google Cloud that allows those containers, or in our world pods, to be deployed within those nodes. And as those services need to scale up and scale down, once again, our VMs themselves are very quick to spin up because it's Google. Kubernetes is very quick at deploying these pre-baked images to those nodes so that we can very quickly service our customers with our core application, or very quickly deploy net new applications to this running environment in an HA automated fashion. If we were to look further up the stack, if we are looking once again to really reduce that cost, not a flaw with Kubernetes, but if it does take some time to ensure that just the right number of applications are running within that single node. Otherwise, there's going to be wasted spend. So for those who are wanting to move even further away from having to manage the Kubernetes node or go with those right sizing estimates, we can go to really the highest end, which is App Engine and Google Functions, being that it's truly your smallest form of application with managed scaling by Google Cloud Platform itself. And so very much centered around websites, around backend triggers, even processing jobs. Between App Engine and Functions, we are moving towards that paradigm of serverless to scale up to the hundreds or the thousands when it's needed, and even being able to scale all the way down to zero during those late nights or those times in which we're not being hit by our customers. So how do we accomplish this? How do we get to automation? What we tend to see is CI/CD is that step. That's the ability to take our code, very quickly build it, be able to test it, and then once we give the green light, either by manual efforts or by automated fashion, deploy this into production for our environments, or for our customers. This is where we find a lot of the bigger companies out there not deploying their new updates or new applications every month. It actually comes down to hundreds, if not thousands, of features and rollouts per day. And so this just allows for a much more fluid process for developers, for companies to immediately find value in an automated way. Less manual processes. We're in the mindset of SADA that if you do it once, automate it. Because that process is going to be used again and again and again. So let's move ourselves away from these daunting day in and day out tasks and move ourselves towards, once again, developing new features and new functions that we can productize and sell to our customers.
So
Right.
Seth, yeah, cover this if you would, please. And then let's get into some of the assessments that we're doing. We've got a few minutes left here. We've got a couple of questions. Can you go into the assessment? Then I want to show the programmatic offers that we're rolling out right now.
Sure. So yeah, very quickly, I think we kind of touched on all these discounts here. But once again, feel free to reach out to us. We can walk you guys through each of these tasks here, from day one custom machines all the way to commitment deals between Google and SADA for deeper levels of discount. And what Charlie was referring to is a good way for us to go ahead and understand where are we bleeding out costs, or where are we not properly right-sized. SADA has a partnership with companies like Cloud Physics, as well as a couple other tools here that allow us to view your VMware or your AWS environment and make those recommendations for right-sizing. And so literally takes a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes to run and start populating the data. It does not actually look into your data itself, so that your databases or any of that. So it's not going to conflict with PII or break compliance. Really, the whole core of this is to look at your virtual machines, your CPUs, your RAM, see how they're being utilized, and seeing if there are ways that we can initially cut costs. And so this is what the output is. I'll be candid. We can focus it around GCP to see what the Google Cloud Platform costs are when taking what I have today and moving it to Google. But nonetheless, there are lessons learned we can take here with the VM right sizing, to where maybe you've had a little bit of a dark corner, not knowing why we have such large EC2 instances in AWS. And so very quickly, you can take this data, you can apply this to your standing environment, and hopefully that provides you guys with enough value, starts to really chip away at the additional costs that we're spending, and gets us into a stable way for the foreseeable future. So with that, Charlie, next steps over to you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So I want to show, before we got a couple questions here, but I want to show some of the programmatic ways that we're thinking about, helping out the SaaS customers, right? So if we look at identifying workloads that may run best on GCP, or you want to see what it would look like if we right-sized them and ran them on GCP, we have a program for that. Seth just covered it, right? These are our infrastructure assessments. These are roughly $20,000 normally. I will tell you what we're doing right now during COVID for, I think, just a little bit longer, maybe another 60 days or so, is we're actually giving these assessments away for free. And so that's where you can dig in and actually see, are you, missing opportunities to right-size some of these environments, and out of curiosity, to do your due diligence. What would it look like if it were to run in Google? So I encourage you to take us up on that programmatic offer. The second one is, once you identify a workload, then what do you do, right? Well, we are running something right now called our Fast Track program. That's in conjunction with Google, and that's where Google provides us funds to help you set up and test a pilot environment of your application. So that would look like you have nothing running in GCP today, and in less than 5 weeks, you have a version of your application actually stood up, piloted, tested, ready for you to build out to be a real production environment. Add your DR, add any special security protocols, things like that. So this is where we can actually take you from nothing to tested and proven in less than 5 weeks. And then third is really our financial and operational optimization. So once you have a workload in GCP, then we want to start to look at, well, what's the best financial arrangement for you, right? I talked a lot about cost of goods sold. I talked a lot about finding the right financial model and making sure that you're doing your due diligence on the cost side, because it is impacting your profitability as a company. This is where we saw to come in with Google, and we help you make sure that you're using all the right environments, optimize the correct environments, and then also put you into a financial structure that makes the most sense for your business. And then lastly, to actually scale out once you're actually running and you're a SADA and a Google partner, welcome to the team. How do we actually help you by being better business partners? So we have what we call the SADA go-to-market program. And that's essentially comprised of joint marketing, joint selling, technical enablement. You get optimization workshops from our professional services group, and sometimes even our CTO, Mr. Miles Ward. So really, this is designed to accelerate revenue for your business. Everything else is designed to make sure that you've got the right technology partner. This is partnering a little bit further in your business and actually helping you scale out from there. Because at the end of the day, you're still going to need net new customers. And if we can help reduce, or at least reduce the cost of sales and marketing for you, or at least amplify the work that you're already doing, we want to make sure we're doing that. So nice thing about this, right now, all of these programs we're giving away for free. So I urge you to reach back out to the email you're going to receive after this call, and reach back out to me. That thing's going to come directly from me. Reach out to me and ask questions about any one of these. So right now, a couple of questions. How do I get in touch with SADA and Google? We've got a new platform that fits SADA and Google's mission. You will get an email from me after this. Simply follow up on that email, reach right back out to me, and I'll make sure that you get in contact with the right team, and we'll figure out how it is that we can help. We love that you're entertaining it. Love that our mission came across clearly enough that you were able to identify with it. So really appreciate the question. Thank you.
I just piggyback on that, Charlie, before we move on to the next one, which is just for anyone that's out there that wants to connect directly with me, please reach out. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or email me directly. My email is zachjordan@google.com. Happy to help it in any way I can. So thank you. Let's keep going to the next one, Charlie.
Perfect. Another question. How do we get help with sales and marketing, like you mentioned, being a business partner? That really goes to the last question, or the last program I just pointed at, the go-to-market program. Beautiful thing about Google, I've worked with other cloud providers before. Beautiful thing about Google is they really have programmatic ways to help get your solution out to the market. It's got to be a good fit, of course, but I haven't seen another cloud provider do a better job of facilitating programs and ways for even Google reps to get compensated on selling your SaaS solution. So there are opportunities like that, all accessible to you through the SADA go-to-market program. So again, I run that program. Reach out to me, excuse me, and then we can help get you in touch with the right groups.
Great. I'll kind of close out with everyone today, basically with the fact that please reach out to us. We can help you both reduce the cost of your infrastructure through a variety of the programs that Seth talked through, as well as through automation. And even more so than that, we can help you grow your top line as well. We do have a large team, a large sales force, a large go-to-market group, a large marketing group. We can help partner with you to help grow your SaaS business, help acquire new customers, and take your company to the next level. So I appreciate everyone joining today. It's been a pleasure to spend the morning with you. And I really look forward to following up on a lot of the programs you talked about today. So have a great one. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay productive, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.